Hello everyone, welcome back to Jurassic World Evolution 2. Today we're going to have a park tour along with some tips and tricks for the Jurassic Difficulty challenge mode on Canada. So let's pull this up real quick and let's move over to Jurassic. So I completed it, not under par time, unfortunately. We will discuss what happened to make me take so long, but I was able to complete it, and you do get the cosmetics, even if you don't finish it on par time. There's probably some achievement that maybe I missed out on that I'll probably want to revisit at some point, but you do get the cosmetics even if you don't finish under par time. So without further ado, let's get into the park and start talking about the park layout and all that. Okay, so whenever I load back in, the screen pops up. I'm not really sure if it's just to remind you that you've already completed the challenge or what, but here is proof that I did in fact complete the challenge mode on Jurassic Difficulty, and that unlocks the Ankylosaur cosmetic genes. So let me quickly change it to daytime so it's a bit easier to see. Alright, and let's pause the game and get over to the starting area of the map right here. Alright, so I'm going to break this video up into a couple different parts. First, I'm going to discuss how to actually get to 5 stars in Jurassic World Evolution 2's challenge mode. It's a bit different than the first game's challenge mode. After that, we're going to discuss the unique challenges that the Canada map provides. Each of the original challenge mode maps have unique differences and little additional challenges that differentiate them from the other maps. Then we're going to go into the park layout that I came up with. And lastly, we will go over some tips and strategies that I learned while playing through this that you all can hopefully implement into your parks, and maybe it'll make your experience a bit easier for you. So number 1, how to get to 5 stars in Jurassic World Evolution 2 challenge mode. So if you go over to here, is it this one, or is it... So if you click on your star rating down here, you will have this box right here, and it says, for me, because I'm at 5 stars, it just says 5 stars. This is your income per minute, but as you are progressing, it will say next star at blank income per minute. So basically your park and star rating is directly tied to your income per minute, this box right here. And remember, you can find that very quickly by clicking on your star rating right over here. Another way to find it is if you come to the management screen and click on finances. Then you can also see your income per minute right here, but the chart that will actually tell you right here, you click on the star rating, this will tell you how much income per minute you need to unlock your next star rating. So what's goofy about this is that there was a point in this playthrough where I had over the total appeal goal, which you can see down here is 6,000, so that's basically the appeal that your park has, whether that comes from dinosaurs or attractions, or anything that generates appeal. So I had well over 6,000, and then if you also click on guests, I had 100% in all of these ratings: transport, restroom, shelter, and accommodation. And then I also had 100% coverage for all food, drink, and shopping, and yet I was only at 4.5 stars. And the reason why is because I did not reach the income per minute goal, which is a little different from how the first game worked. And basically what it comes down to is what actually generates profits. And in the game, the main thing that generates the profits are these amenities, the large, medium, and small amenities, as well as, let me pull up the finance screen again. So let me show you. If you go click on finances, you can see here, ticket sales and amenity revenue are the two things that generate your income per minute. So ticket sales is just straight up how many guests are in the park, and amenity revenue is how much money you're making from your amenities. So basically, it's all about your income per minute, which is a little different, and I'm still learning how to optimize this. But basically, you really want to build your parks with how you're going to lay out your amenities in mind. So let me give you an example of what didn't really work out very good. So as you can see over here, I have a lagoon with a Tylosaurus and a couple Plesiosaurus, and I have some large amenities, one of each, shopping, food, and drink. And they're making about the same amount, 33,000 profit, but they're not full. They're about 400 out of 775 guests each, so I am not maximizing my profit over here. Ideally, what I probably could have done is I could have made this lagoon bigger, so I could have put more marine reptiles in it. Or another thing I could have done, which I didn't think of until much later, is I could have maybe reorganized this so I could fit an attraction over here. Because as you see right here, provides plus 100 park appeal, and your guests are kind of distributed throughout the park based on where the most appeal is. So basically, if I could increase the appeal for this section of the park, I would have gotten more profit out of these amenities. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. If you want to think about it another way, all of these other statistics, the total appeal, and the food, drink, and shopping coverage, they all feed into your your income per minute. But as you can see, I'm at 5 stars, but I don't have 100% coverage for everything. And that's because what it really boils down to is your income per minute, which that was basically why I did not finish in par time. I did not understand that until until I had the park pretty much set out, and I was trying to fiddle around with things for quite a while, and I eventually just said, alright, I guess I need to kind of change up the park, and that's what prevented me from finishing in par time. Okay, section 2. What is unique about the Canada Challenge? So the first thing, and unfortunately I can't bring it up right here, but if you click on, let's see, which one is it normally? I think it's this here. There will normally be this little box that says reach 5 stars or Jurassic Challenge Canada, and if you click on it, it will take you to a screen similar to this, and it will say, I believe in this corner, the unique extra penalties or challenges that the map has. So for example, for Germany, you can only have 10 species, and there's no genetic modifications allowed, and the only type of guests that show up in your park are the nature and the luxury guests, I believe. For Canada, the challenges are the scientists' salaries are much higher, and I believe the other thing is that research cost is a lot higher. So in order to combat that, you're going to want to be very careful with your scientists who you pick. If you want to try to hire as many with altruistic salary as you can, and anything that has cheaper research would be fantastic as well. If you look over here, most of the scientists that I ended up hiring, their salaries are not that high, and this will help keep your costs down throughout the game. It also, if you can, it helps to limit the number of scientists that you have to hire because their salaries are, because of the challenge modifier, they're going to be 100% higher than normal. So when you first load in, it's a good idea to take a look at your scientists and see if there's any of them that have a ridiculously high salary, and to see if there's any new scientists you can hire that would be better. The other unique thing about the challenge map for Canada is the storms. So for this map, you don't have tornadoes or like lightning storms, you get blizzards. And what the blizzards do is they disable your response teams, so they basically get stuck out in the snow. And they also severely limit the cone of visibility for your attractions. So the way that I handled this, and I kind of got this idea from watching some other challenge mode guides, was I opened up all of the shelters, and then I took control of the helicopter, and I just flew around and took a bunch of pictures of dinosaurs. And if you didn't know, taking pictures of your dinosaurs actually gives you basically free money. The amount of money you earn goes down as you copy or see the same species multiple times. But basically, if you fit a bunch of dinosaurs in one picture, it will give you a lot of money for it. So that is how I handled the weather problems on Canada, and how I handled the scientist problems with the additional cost. Alright, part 3 is how did I lay out the park? So here's where you start. I pretty much built, now everything has the luxury path and everything, but I basically built a straight line for several links of path out to here. This is where I put the first hatchery, and this right here was the first exhibit, this one on the right over here. This map actually gives you a free Brachiosaurus that you can tranquilize and have in your exhibit. It starts out over here. You do have to tranquilize it manually, so that means you need the response facility first. And in order to research the response facility, you actually have to have released one dinosaur from a hatchery. So basically, the strategy is to get Struthiomimus incubating, release one Struthiomimus at least into your exhibit. That will allow you to research the response facility. Then you can go tranquilize and move the Brachiosaurus into your enclosure. As we all know, Brachiosaurus has a ridiculous tree forest need, so the exhibit will have to be quite large. But once you get the Brachiosaurus in here, and you get your beginner amenities and your emergency shelter and restrooms, that will pretty much catapult you straight to 1 star very quickly, which is quite nice. You may be wondering, where is the Brachiosaurus? Well, unfortunately, I took way too long, as you probably saw it took 9 hours, 47 minutes of game time, so the Brachiosaurus passed away from old age, and I put some Apatosaurus in here instead. So that got me to 1 star. I started filling this enclosure with Struthiomimus and the Pseudoceratops. My second enclosure was over here, which I put is mainly filled with Dilophosaurus. You can have, I think, 15 or so of them in one enclosure together, and they'll be happy, but it'll need to be big enough to fit 15 of them. After that, I built the second exhibit over here, and this one has Amargasaurus, Torosaurus, and Parasaurolophus in it. And that, between those 3 here, this main chunk of the island got me to about 2.5 stars. And then from there, I decided to make a Jurassic tour, and I built this enclosure over here. This one has Sauropelta, Gallimimus, and Dracorex in it. And I also have the tour going through an aviary, which has Pteranodon, I don't know how to say this one, so I'm just gonna hover over it here. I think this is one of the little mini expansion pterosaurs, and the Dimorphodon. Supposedly in the past, people have had lots of problems with the aviaries. I did encounter some problems, but I overall thought it was worth it, actually, just because these pterosaurs really don't need that much space, and there's a lot of dinosaur appeal packed in here. But one thing that I noticed that I had problems with was using this large perch point here. The small ones I didn't have issues with. It was only the big ones. If a pterosaur got sick and it landed on here, for some reason the little drone that comes in here to cure them, it would never hit them. It would always miss. So for future playthroughs, I actually plan to continue using an aviary, but I won't be using the large perch point anymore in challenge mode anyway. And so this whole wing over here, so that's this enclosure, and the aviary got me to about 3.5-ish stars. And then of course along the way you're having to upgrade your facilities, making bigger amenities, and kind of keeping an eye on if you're maximizing your profits or not. I have 2 hotels in here as well, but then it became time to move on to a new area of the island, which, as you can see over here, I built a lagoon. In hindsight, I would have liked to have made this bigger. It's a little too small for what I needed. If I wanted to have multiple Tylosaurus in here, but the moment I released a second one, the space wasn't big enough. And no matter what I did, I couldn't fit more lagoon around here, so in hindsight, I would have liked to have made this bigger and used this space a little more wisely. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see here I'm not maximizing my profits out of these large amenities. I could be making more, but they're not filled with guests because there's just not enough appeal over here. But this one has 1 Tylosaurus and let's see, 5 Plesiosaurus. The Tylosaurus will occasionally kill a Plesiosaurus, which isn't great, but at this point in the game, when you're building over here, if the money wasn't really as much of a problem. It was more about trying to maximize the profits and the dinosaur appeal. So this got me to 4.5 to 4.9 stars, and I literally spent 3 hours trying to move amenities around to get from 4.9 to 5 stars, and I just couldn't do it. No matter what I did, it just wouldn't work. So I eventually gave in and made this tiny, kind of less nice area over here where we've got 1 small amenity of each, and we have a very hastily built Deinonychus enclosure. This enclosure is just barely big enough to satisfy their space needs. This game now has something where if the dinosaur space needs aren't met, they get like an illness because the enclosure isn't big enough, and so these Deinonychus got sick because the enclosure wasn't perfect for them almost immediately, so that was a little bit annoying. And then I put some more Dilophosaurus over here, and that basically just barely generated enough profit from these additional amenities to kick me over the edge into the 5-star range, which I believe was you needed 1,200,000 income per minute was what you needed, not profit per minute. That's a different measurement. So one other thing that I think is important to note is that pretty much every main area of the park has its own paleomedical facility and response team, so you can see the aviary and this enclosure here has their own response team here. This area of the park has their own response team here. It's definitely a pain to have to build these, but it's worth it when diseases start spreading. And even the lagoon has one over here as well. So that is basically the structure and layout of the park. Now it's time to move into the final portion of the video, and that is tips and strategies and things that I learned along the way that will hopefully make things easier for you if you decide to tackle Jurassic Difficulty Canada. So I already went over a few of these. One of them I have written down is to check on the scientists. So remember, everything about the scientists is more expensive, their salaries, their research, because of this map's extra challenge. So you want to hire altruistic salary and cheaper research if you can. Next, it should be a big priority to get the Brachiosaurus in here right away, so that's going to generate a lot of appeal very easily. So in order to do that, remember you have to have released one dinosaur from the hatchery, and that allows you to research the response facility. Equally important is as soon as you have enough profit being generated and you have the scientist capability to do so, it is very, very important to research the paleomedical facility as soon as possible. Let me show you where this is on the research tree. I believe infrastructure. So once you research the ranger and capture team, that unlocks the paleomedical facility here. I believe it requires at least 5 of the welfare skill points in your scientist, so that can be a little bit of a hurdle early on in the game. But I almost had to restart from scratch because I had not built a paleomedical facility, and some dinosaurs got sick pretty early on. The only reason I didn't have to restart was I just happened to have a kind of easy contract that I could fulfill, and the money from the contract allowed me to make it through a kind of rough starting point. Alright. So another tip is how to deal with the winter storms. Like I said, what worked for me was I opened the shelters and I just flew around and took as many pictures with the helicopter as possible, or if you have a ranger team that's stuck out in the middle of an enclosure, you can still select them and take direct control and take pictures from the ranger team. Here is another important tip. So Dilophosaurus is one of the best ways to generate appeal because you unlock it pretty early. It's pretty easy to take care of as far as a carnivore goes, but one of their big drawbacks is that the Dilophosaurus genome, let me pull this up, I have it modified here. Let's see. Isn't there a reset button? Reset all attributes. Yes. So when the default Dilophosaurus genome has a 25% chance of getting the sickly trait, which is very, very bad for Jurassic Challenge mode because everything is getting sick all of the time. You don't want this trait. So what you want to be able to do is go up here and at least get this to 0%. Ideally, you'll make them have a chance of getting the resilient trait, but you don't want them to have the sickly chance. That's not good. In order to actually research this, so it's the resilience trait that's going to be in here under gene modification. So in order to actually unlock this, one of the easiest way is to cure diseases in like several dinosaurs, which on Jurassic Difficulty that's going to happen right away. But I would suggest not releasing any Dilophosaurus until you've unlocked and researched this genetic trait. And then my final tip has to do with why I did not finish in par time, and that is spreading out your appeal for the parks. And that basically has to do with maximizing your profit from your amenities. What I think didn't work for me possibly was that I had so much of my park's appeal congregated right in here. I think it would have been better to maybe to somehow, if I could have gotten more appeal over this way so that I was getting full profit from these, I probably, this last section of the park over here might have not been necessary. A couple ways that you can do that, let me show you here. If you go to attractions, this is one of the first things you unlock, guest attraction. And you can see, provides plus 100 park appeal to all of the guest types. So I could have put an attraction over here. Another thing that you can do is the Innovation Center provides, obviously this thing is gigantic, but it provides a lot of appeal. I maybe could have fit it here somewhere. I probably could have moved some things around and fit it there. But the whole point is being very selective and very careful with how you organize your parks so that you don't run into the situation where I did, where you have a ton of dinosaur appeal, but for some reason you're just not able to maximize your profits out of the amenities, and you're kind of scratching your head wondering, why am I not at 5 stars? Some ways that you can do that are, if you actually go, I'm going to turn the game on live for a second here. So if you click on your amenities, if they're directly connected to a main path like this, and you go to move building, let me try that again, just a second. Okay, so I'm building a new one. So if I put it on the path, you can see on the bottom left it says projected guests. And it's basically giving me an estimate of how many guests are going to be showing up for the amenity. See, the farther away I get, now it's at 0 because there's no reason for the guests to come over here. So let's try this area of the map over here. It's still at 0 because they're all going to want to go to the bigger amenities, and those aren't full, remember? So basically you can kind of use this tool to see where the most number of guests are going to go into your amenities, and you can place them in the best spot possible. So you can see, like here, down here, it was 43, and now it's 47, probably just because a dinosaur wandered out of view and the appeal has changed. But if I move it over here, now it's at 70. And unfortunately, that level of micromanagement is going to probably be necessary just because of how finicky it can be to get the profit per minute goals that the game wants you to get. So that is all that I have for Jurassic Canada. I hope this was helpful and informative. This was my first Jurassic Difficulty challenge mode for the Jurassic World Evolution 2, so I wanted to kind of play this one off screen so that I could figure things out for myself and kind of get acclimated to how the game has changed since the first one. Going forward, I plan to have more in-depth videos. So for example, I have already recorded part 1 of the Germany playthrough, and ideally going forward on each of the maps I will have like at least maybe a 4-part series for each map that kind of goes through the whole gameplay of going from 0 all the way to 5 stars and which dinosaurs I used and all that stuff. So thank you all very, very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.